If you want to overcome imposter syndrome, don't make it about you. Make it about your client. What are they struggling with? What are their problems? What are their challenges? What up? It's Koniak, and today I am going to share the #1 way to overcome imposter syndrome. Yesterday, I had the opportunity, the privilege to speak to Tony Robbins' Business Accelerator community. And this was between 700 to 900 people that were on Zoom, that were on YouTube, that were global in nature. And it was a very intimidating audience for me. It's all founders and entrepreneurs. And I felt myself experiencing imposter syndrome. Even though I'm a pretty confident person, I felt myself going through a lot of the symptoms of imposter syndrome. So I thought it would be appropriate to share a video on how I have overcome it, and also what I did yesterday to prepare. So first, let's talk about what is imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is feeling like you're not worthy of your role or of the audience that you're working with. So you could feel imposter syndrome in sales if you have to meet with a CEO or a CIO. They're high level, they're very successful, and you might feel like a lowly seller. Like, why would they want to meet with me? What do I know? So it's this feeling of incompetence or unworthiness that's a result of putting an audience on a pedestal or looking up to people saying, I'm not equal to them, right? So that often creates a lot of pain points. Specifically, one is over-preparedness. If you feel like you're an imposter, you're going to over-prepare. You might spend 4, 5, 10 hours preparing for one meeting that's a discovery meeting where you don't even know if you can help them yet. And because of that, you've just spent a lot of time that you otherwise could use better if they're not qualified, for example. So over-preparedness could be one symptom. Another symptom is you get to the meeting and you're nervous, right? You're nervous, or you feel like you have to perform would be another system. You have to nail the meeting. You have to get your pitch right. You have to get your talk track right. You have to be perfect, right? These are all very negative things, because when you're nervous, or you feel like you need to perform, or you feel like you're not worthy, you're actually not going to be in a flow state where you can do your best work, where you're just empty. A flow state is being empty, being present, being able to have a real conversation, being authentic. And when you're dealing with imposter syndrome, that is impossible to do, because you're thinking about yourself, you're thinking about what you're going to say, you're nervous, you're anxious, right? And those things don't let you get to a flow state. So let's get into how and what I did yesterday. And it's really, really simple. Okay. This actually, I first heard this from one of my mentors, Rory Vaden. And this really did and does provide the #1 solution on how you overcome it. And it's this phrase, this quote. Remember this: there is no nervous when you're in service. There is no nervous when you're in service. So what does that mean? What it means is, when I have imposter syndrome, I'm making it all about me. I'm not good enough. I need to perform. I'm going to do a bad job. Me. Literally, it is a symptom of being self-centered. But when you're in service, you're focusing on the other person. You're focusing on your audience. So rather than me trying to do the perfect presentation, get the slides perfect, get the practice perfect, by all means, you should practice. That's important. You should be prepared. That's important. But ultimately, I was making it about me. And what I had to do is I had to remember, who's my audience? These are founders. Most of them are new founders. Most of them have not done the revenue that I've done. Most of them don't have the sales background that I have, selling 19 years. So for that audience, I am the expert, and I'm going to teach them principles of selling. The topic was think like a seller, not a founder. I know how to think like a seller because I've been a seller. Even if I'm running a business, I'm still a salesperson at heart. So fundamentally, once I remembered I'm teaching founders to sell, I'm going to demystify what it means to sell. I'm going to help them with knowledge that they don't have because they didn't work for Salesforce for 9 years or Rico. So for me, that's what I had to remind myself. That is the solution. If you want to overcome imposter syndrome, don't make it about you. Make it about your client. Okay? What are they struggling with? What are their problems? What are their challenges? Right? When you're thinking about them and not yourself, you could actually be in service to them, and you don't have to perform. And the best The best sessions, the best meetings happen when you're not trying to perform, but when you're trying to have an authentic, real conversation. So that's what I did yesterday. I showed up authentically. I shared my story. I said, this isn't going to be your story. It's my story. This is what worked for me. Take what you want and leave the rest. I'm here to serve. And that's how I framed it up. And the meeting went phenomenal. I got phenomenal reviews. I got tons of people. The chat was blowing up the whole time because I was in service of them. So that's the number one way. There's a couple other things you can do also to feel more confident going in, and it's understand the problem you solve. Become an expert at the problem you solve, right? So again, the problem I solved yesterday was that founders had a bad impression of sales, and so they avoided it, or they came to conversations awkward because that's what they project about what sales is. So demystifying that and showing them what sales is and what it isn't was the foundation. So again, what problem you just solve? Why does that problem exist? What pain is the problem causing? If you're a master of the 5 Ps, which is something I teach in my coaching program, then this is something that fundamentally you can learn to do on your own, right? We're just doing that in my coaching program right now. Is don't worry about the outcomes, right, that your product or service delivers. Don't worry about the features. Worry about understanding the problem you solve, why it exists, and the pain it's causing. And if you know that really well, your customers are going to want to lean in. So that's the work that you can do. If you want to get the link, I do have a course. It's very reasonably priced. It's called Mastering Your Message, and it's all problem-centric messaging. So I'll put a link in the newsletter to that course if you're interested at the bottom of this newsletter that you're getting. And you can check that out if you want to be a master of the problem you solve. But that's really important. Number one is, there is no nervous when you're in service. Make it about them. Number two is get comfortable understanding the problem you solve. Because when you know the problem you solve and you really believe you can help people, your heart will be in service. If you don't know how you can help, or if you're not familiar, how the heck are you going to show up in service, right? So you really need to understand what your potential customer or your prospect is going through before you show up. And you may not know that in all the detail because you haven't done detailed discovery for them yet, but you want to know the general problems that your product or service can solve and what people in their persona are faced with, so you can speak their language. That's where the studying is. That's where the messaging is. And that's really important. And the last thing you can do is you can actually learn some case studies. Understand who's had that problem and how have you helped them, and really dive into understand those case studies of people that look like them, that have worked with your company, that were, what was their situation before and what is it after. So when you show up for that meeting, right, you show up with the heart of service. You're empty. You're not showing up trying to impress them. Okay, you leave the best impression when you're not trying to impress. So you show up with a heart of service, trying to help them. Number two, you can speak their language. You understand the problem you solve. And number three, you have proof points of people who you've already helped solve that problem. So if you want to overcome imposter syndrome, remember, there is no nervous in service. Again, if you're interested in learning how to master the problem you solve and you want to really become an expert on that, here's a link to my course, Mastering Your Message. I'll put the checkout page here if you want to see that. It's all about problem-centric messaging. And I'm Koniak. I'll see you guys next week. Hope this helps. Take care.